Good evening. So today we will be focusing on an overview of forensic scene investigation. In this case, as a doctor, you'll be working with a scene of crime officer, usually which is a police officer, or it could be a legal officer or any other officer appointed by the authorities. So in this discussion, we will have a case, an introduction, we have definitions, principles of forensic scene of crime investigation, role of the forensic scene investigator, the basic protocol for scene processing, crime scene protocols, types of evidence investigating, the evidence, list of evidence collection materials, methods for searching and the searching patterns, and then we'll conclude the discussion. So we will start by having a scenario. You have been called by police to come to a one-roomed apartment to investigate a possible homicide. The body is found on the floor near the center of the room with what appears to be a single gunshot to the head, and the suspect weapon is lying nearby. So you are tasked to describe how to go about investigating this scene, with particular reference to establishing the integrity of the crime scene, safety and contamination control of any evidence, and that will be the focus of the discussion of today's topic. So, some few basic definitions. A crime scene is any physical location in which crime has occurred or is suspected to have occurred. You could have a primary or secondary crime scene. The primary one is the original location of the crime or accident, and the secondary location is an alternate location where additional evidence might be found. And the suspect is a person thought to be capable of committing a crime, and an accomplice is that person who is associated with someone suspected to have committed or to be committing a crime. So when you arrive at the scene, initial response and prioritization. The first priority is to secure the scene of crime. The next is to assess and document, and the whole coordination process of the process. So the principles of scene investigation, like I've just mentioned, is securing the scene of crime, preventing contamination, and preservation of physical evidence. So the forensic scene investigators usually interact with, it is a multidisciplinary team. Mostly you have the police officers, you might have civilian officers, you might have judicial system practitioners like the lawyers, the judges, and other practitioners in the court. You might also have forensic scientists like a forensic pathologist, or the laboratory experts and other experts. So it is usually a big team of many members. You might have forensic medical practitioners, or you might be called to be one of the members of the team. And you also often have the general community participating as eyewitnesses, victims, and so on. So the role of the forensic scene investigator is to, again, like I've said, to establish a clear and direct lines of communication and be effective managers at the scene of crime or incident. They process physical evidence collected from the scene and investigate the process as it relates to physical evidence, and they give final presentation of physical evidence at the court. So we can summarize what we have just discussed as an investigator comes to do a survey of the crime scene, take some pictures of the crime scene, map and measure the crime scene, record and document the location of physical evidence at the crime scene, searching of fingerprints and other physical marks and evidence about the suspected crime. So the protocol of investigating a crime scene is a stepwise approach. The first step is to interview the first officer at the scene or the victim to determine what allegedly happened, what time it took place, and how was the crime allegedly committed. The next step is to examine the crime scene itself, which will help identify possible evidence, identify the point of entry and exit, and outline the general layout of the crime scene. The next step is to document and to create pictorial record of the scene, as well as a rough sketch to demonstrate the layout of the crime scene and to identify the exact position of the deceased victim or other evidence within the crime scene. The fourth step is to process the crime scene for evidence, both physical and testimonial evidence, as we shall see the types of evidence in crime scene investigation. And it is the crime scene technician's responsibility to identify, evaluate, and collect physical evidence from the crime scene for further analysis by the crime laboratory. Sometimes you may not have the crime scene technician. You have got to be to learn how to do this yourself so that you have sufficient evidence. So there are types of evidence. One is testimonial evidence, which includes oral or written statements given to the investigators, given to the police and court as testimony by people who saw what happened during the crime. Then you have physical evidence, which is any material items that you might find at the crime scene, on the victims, or found in the suspect's possession or nearby where you found the victim. And then there is trace evidence, which is any physical evidence that is found in small but measurable amounts, such as strands of hair, fibers of skin, skin cells, and so on. You might also collect samples for drug chemistry, as we shall see in the section of forensic toxicology, and this will help you to determine the presence of controlled substances like cocaine and even maybe alcohol. Trace chemistry, identification and comparison of materials from fires, explosions, paints, and glass. Microscopy, which will involve microscopic identification and comparison of evidence such as hairs, fibers, woods, soils, building materials, insulation, and other materials. You can also do DNA analysis from body fluids, dried stains, even teeth, saliva. You can do toxicology tests from body fluids like the blood, from the liver. You can do toxicological analysis, or you can do latent prints by identifying and comparing fingerprints or other hidden impressions from sources like feet, shoes, ears, lips, or thread on vehicle, the threads of the vehicle tires. You can also find ballistics of firearms. You might have to investigate the bullets and the ammunition through the comparison of fired bullets, cartridges, guns, and gunpowder patterns on people and on objects. Tool marks, the examiner, you might see the marks left by tools or on objects at the crime scene or on the victim, such as the hammer used to break a door or screwdriver used to prick a lock. Then you might find some documents that might be questions. You could find ID or other documents that could give you an insight into the crime of scene. This one is illustrating a tape which was used to secure a crime scene. Again, this one is also illustrating securing and preserving crime scene. So these are the samples the types of evidence that are collected, and I've really already talked about those: the blood signs, the hair, fibers, glass, firearms, questioned documents, and so on. Again, this one is showing, you can see how the crime scene was left intact. You want to leave the crime scene as intact as possible so that you don't contaminate the evidence. So in searching, there are three approaches that are used. There is a negative approach, a positive approach, and the information or intelligent approach. The positive approach is centers on what is known, the facts that are expected to be found at the crime scene, and there is a tool mark in the scenario. Negative search focuses on the facts that are not found at which might give alternative explanations for the crime that is being investigated. Then intelligent search requires a combination of known facts, considerations for other explanations, and a systematic and thorough approach to locate any other evidence, such as findings of tip of pliers based on information about a pair of pliers. There are several patterns that are used for searching. There is the line method, the spiral method, the wheel or ray method, the grid method, and the quadrant or zone method. In the illustration in the picture, the first one you can see is the strip method, whereby you move in one line and then you again come back in another line. The other one is showing the grid method, whereby the crime scene is imaginarily divided into grid form, and you move like as if in the spiral, but again you again repeat and do it across. Then there is the spiral method, where you go in concentric circles. This again is illustrating what we have just been talking about. You see the line or the strip search pattern, where one or two investigators start at the boundary of the crime scene and search in a straight lines across to the other side of the crime scene. Then the grid approach, where two or more investigators form a grid by searching in line patterns that overlap and they are perpendicular to each other where they intersect. The spiral search, you can see in the illustration, people move in the concentric pattern from inward to outward, or from outward to inwards, as you might decide to do. Then the wheel method, several investigators search in straight lines from the center to the boundary, or from the boundary to the center. Then there is a quadrant or zone search pattern. The crime scene is divided into smaller sections or zones. One or more investigators are assigned to search each zone. So some take homes, you have got to take important note of the time when the crime was committed, time when the security were first called, time when the security arrived at the scene, note the weather conditions, e.g. the rain, snow, fog, or wind where applicable, note the humidity factor where you have visible air pollution, and also the temperature inside or outside at the crime scene. So this has been just a brief overview. It is a very big topic in and specialty in forensic investigation, but this discussion was aiming at giving you an overview that can guide you when you want to do further reading, and also when you want to open up for further study. I thank you so much for listening to